My favorite place I've ever worked didn't have a human resources department, and I don't think that's a coincidence. Uh, this company was small enough that it didn't need one. The owner, the boss, knew everyone personally, was interfacing with them daily. There was no real need for any sort of policy or procedure because it was just like, yeah, let's just figure it out as we go. Uh, Travel was like the travel policy was, here's the company credit card, don't do anything stupid. I'll be checking your purchases, but anything reasonable is fine. And everyone knew everyone else, and everyone knew what was expected of them. It was a really nice system. Companies have a way of losing that culture as they grow. I mean, I'm old enough that Valve's human resources document, when they released that, they published that as a bit of a PR stunt, a very clever one. That went viral because their philosophy was do whatever you want, but if you're not adding value, then we'll fire you. It's like, cool. Like literally, there was no boss telling you had to work on something. You were free to collaborate with whoever you wanted on whatever you wanted, but if you weren't doing anything valuable to the company, then you're on borrowed time. And it's a really appealing to, especially to men, the freedom to move like that, to do whatever you want to do, to to do whatever's valuable, and without the excessive constraints of the human resources sort of mindset where everything needs a policy, everything needs to be like properly documented, like over properly documented. Obviously, you want to keep a paper trail of important decisions. You want to avoid fraud, but if that's your goal, then you would have like a tenth of the policy and the procedure and the paperwork of a typical mid-sized organization. Like, men just want to do what we know needs doing. Like, there's a problem in front of us. We go and solve it. Cool. It's much more of a feminine thing to want to, well, let's figure out if we can build a collaborative vibe so that everyone's on the same page, and then we can codify this so that everyone knows exactly what's going to happen. There's value in that, of course there is. But at some point, if there's a crisis or there's an opportunity, you need a leader to step up, go, here's what we're doing, follow me or we're doomed. And magic happens. Like, this is like a company with a culture like that is able to move, it's able to breathe. The problem with a culture like that is it creates a it creates a very chaotic vibe, and the chaos is unpleasant to some people, especially to like the higher leaders. They don't really know what's going on. The company's pulling itself in too many different directions at once, and so they prefer to stifle the creativity along with the chaos of just like human resourcing everything, putting policies and procedures and rules and accountability, and let's have, daily check-ins, and let's like have these Zoom meetings that go for an hour because that's the time that's been scheduled, and the spark gets snuffed out. And I was thinking about this because the church is a similar sort of situation, and the church is one of the analogies for the church is that she is the bride of Jesus. And so with that analogy, then of course she's going to have this feminine need to regulate everything and control everything and make sure everything is written in procedure, and so everyone can access the procedure and everyone follows the procedure, and everything is ultra stable to the point where nothing sparks. It's actually quite a good system, given that some of the chaos that emerges from like the spiritual life, is demonic, it's evil, it's destructive. A big part of Christianity's appeal and success throughout history is being able to stabilize, smooth over, and effectively defeat a lot of the darker sort of chaos that no other system can properly handle. And you got some systems that like lean in to the darkness and the chaos. They're just like the full like dark nature sort of stuff, the all devouring mother, where it's just violent and chaotic and brutal, like the darkest impulses of the savage man just completely unleashed. And you have some systems, most forms of nature worship are like this, where it's like, well, we'll just go by vibes, we'll just like connect with the bigger thing around us, which happens to be Mother Earth, and we'll have some guidelines on how to do that, we'll have some procedures around how to do that. But then like the chaos inherent in that, the chaos in nature worship, means that just over a few generations, and suddenly you're suddenly you've got human sacrifice going on, or suddenly you've just got like this evil, dark chaos. And and so the church, her goal is to prevent that. And she does that in a very similar way to how HR prevents like the chaos of unaligned teams or people committing fraud or whatever. And it's just, let's just put some blanket smothering policies across this. And it's, like, as I say, it's successful, it's effective, and most of those policies are biblical, they're divinely inspired, so it works out quite well. The issue comes when you have the sort of man, especially, occasionally women, but usually it's a man who you best describe as primal. Someone who is connected with nature, but is also connected with God. Someone who is aligned with the best parts of like their animalistic self, without being a slave to like base hungers, or without following the whims of whatever chaos or whatever trends are happening at the moment. You meet guys like this, and they have like this aura, this presence. They feel like they're far more connected to the world around you than you are. They're really quite impressive. I know a few quite well, and they're not perfect people by any means, but they are extraordinary human beings, unique and powerful and effective. Great people to know. And these sorts of people, even though they tend to have this reverence for the divine, because they are that integrated into their body, into their mind, into their soul. But church often feels stifling for them, because it's like, well, you sit in the pews and you read the same things, and you sing when the pastor tells you to sing, and some of it's really quite good, like you're reciting the Nicene Creed over and over again. It's like beautiful, but much of it is like ritual around that ritual, which is only really there to sort of like stabilize things and smother things, and doesn't really vibe for them. And it's really funny because Jesus clearly had no problem with these primal sort of guys. The sort of people who like really connected to the land, but also really connected to God. He held in quite high esteem because John the Baptist is the classic archetype of one. Jesus said that he was like the greatest man outside the kingdom of heaven. And he was the sort of guy who he didn't rely on anyone. He was entirely self-sufficient. He didn't need any sort of distractions or indulgences or luxuries. He just lived life on his terms. He'd eat locusts and honey because that's what he was able to get, and he didn't need any more. And even though he was so far outside the system, like the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the ruling class, despite being so far out that system, he was entirely disruptive to it. Like the Pharisees and the Sadducees hated him Because people would go to him, even though he's out in the wilderness. He's not, excuse me, he's not seeking them out, he's not knocking on their door, he's not marketing to them, he's just doing his own thing. People would flock to him and he'd baptize them. And this was incredibly disruptive. Not because he was particularly doing anything all that disruptive. I mean, in theory, a person could go get baptized and come back and continue to live under the Pharisees and the Sadducees. But his vibe, his presence, what he was doing to the culture, the way he was reshaping all of the old paradigms, was incredibly dangerous to them. And not just the religious leaders, but King Herod, because that's another thing with these primal sort of guys, is they cannot tolerate wrongdoing. They cannot compromise. If you're a bad person, or if you do something that's evil, they can't just smile and get along to get along. They are going to call you out for it, even if you're the king. And of course, that's exactly what John the Baptist does. He calls out King Herod. King Herod arrests him. The king does some really stupid things with a dancer girl, and it leads to John the Baptist being, an untimely end, an undignified death that a man that great really deserved much better. And Jesus really admired this. He loved this about John the Baptist. And so this sort of this primal sort of guy, it feels like church is too stuffy. Even though you might love what the church stands for and you want to be closer to Jesus, but the church is suffocating you, just know that that's not only is that fine, that's actually quite a beautiful thing. The only thing I'd warn against with that is you do need the Bible, and you do need the church to guide you. If you're relying on your own instincts, or you're hoping that God will whisper in your ear what you need to hear, rarely works like that. You have the church, you have the Bible. If you want God to speak to you, he speaks to you through these means. Now, obviously not every church is created equal, and some churches, bless their hearts, but they do quite a lot of damage. And so as the primal man, your goal is to find someone or find a system that can guide you without smothering that spark. Because the last thing that needs to happen is you just become this corporate drone. You put on the tie, you put on the suit, you go to the office, you're under the fluorescent lights all day. That's okay for some people. That's not okay for someone like this, someone like you. You need that connection with what's true, with what's beautiful, with what's good. You need to be fully grounded in nature, while also fully connected with God. And anything that feels bureaucratic, whether that's an office with an overbloated human resources department, or whether that's a church that's a little bit too addicted to its own superfluous rituals, it's not going to resonate with you. Now, I have no real easy answers for you here, nothing that I could apply to everyone watching this, because if you are this sort of guy, you're unique. Yeah, I can describe you in an archetype, and yeah, I can say that you're like John the Baptist, but it doesn't really narrow things down to exactly what you need. If you're looking for more specific guidance, know that I'm here and I'm able to help you. I am fairly across the Bible, shall we say. Most of what I do is grounded in the Bible, and I aim for all of it to be grounded in God's Word. And so when I help people, whether I'm using hypnosis, or whether I'm using other psychology things, or whether we're just chatting, whether we're just hanging out, I do my best, as flawed as I am, to do that through a biblical lens, it can be exactly what you're missing. Because if you're that much of an independent person, a soul who's that far out the system, you can often struggle to find something that manages to be grounded in the Bible, but is not so grounded that it just nullifies what you have or who you are. If you're interested, let's have a chat. And if not, I hope that this has been useful for you. I hope this has sort of opened your perspective a little bit and shown that things aren't necessarily how they might seem. That like the church might seem a bit stuffy, it might seem a bit like a human resources department at times, but at the same time, she is the bride. And if you find the right church, the right community, like within her, I've met people through the church, even through some of like the stuffier churches, who are just this wild, like this independent sort of like charismatic in the old sense of the word, someone like deeply connected to themselves and nature and God. And they still go to church, partly to keep that connection with God, but also partly to lead other men like them, to show them that more is possible. And that's what I hope you take away from this video. Whether or not you reach out to me, I hope that you realize that more is possible, and you don't have to do this alone. You shouldn't have to do this alone. But there's far more available to you than might seem. Alright, that's enough for today. Peace be with you.